Thank you very much, Luis. I guess you had a good time as an overseas student when you were in Europe. So probably this first question is to you. When you were an overseas student, well, Chinese overseas student here in Europe, what was the experience that inspired, apparently probably not really good experience. What was the experience that inspired you to do further, to have this innovative way to do it? Give us some example, please. Well, one thing I probably just very quickly adding is that for Chinese families, traveling is not only just for leisure, but also it's a great way of education. Chinese people and travelers, they have always valued travel very highly. It is even a way to invest into the education and the future for their children. So apparently Luis is part of that, and could you please share with us your experience? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, while talking about this topic, I have a lot to say, really. Yeah, because, firstly, I'm a big fan of 穷游. Yeah, really. Yeah, I actually have traveled almost half of the earth. Yeah, I've been to many places, but later I found it's a bit boring because I cannot understand. I cannot tell the difference between this castle or that castle or this church or that church. I feel a bit boring. And one story, it's a kind of love story, happens on me, make me to have this idea and to do this business. And I remember when I stayed in Spain, my girlfriend come to visit me, and I make a trip to Paris. You know, the Chinese girl love to take photos. Yeah, I'm a good photographer, so I make very good photos. Try to make her happy because I'm in the process of chasing her. So really, yeah. And after I take so many beautiful pictures, and she asked me that, would you tell me the story of Eiffel Tower? And I cannot tell, you know. I try my best to speak as many words as I can, but I cannot last for 2 minutes, for example. And the end very awful. So at the same day, I try to prepare the story or the information for the trip of the next day. But I found it very difficult, neither. There's a few channels to get this information, and it's difficult for me to remember and to repeat it when I bring her to, in the journey next day. And then, okay, so I find another solution. I always try to find solution. So I rent the audio guide, but I found the place on the street, for example, Arc of Trophy, there's no audio guide. And when I rent some in other place, and they are in English, French, Spanish, but perhaps Japanese, but no Chinese. So I cannot solve this problem neither. So at that time, I think, wow, if there was an application that can tell the story of Eiffel Tower, I will pay £10. Really? So, that's the idea. And then I ask many friends, it could be a good idea, so I do it. And I create a company, I attract the investment, the venture capital. So now we are the #1 in the segment of audio tour guide. Yeah. And now we have finished 2 rounds of the financing.
And I hope you have already got either this girlfriend confirmed, or you still have more girlfriends to come, okay? I think after the, thank you very much to share this very great story with us. I think after the first session, our audience here probably felt, yes, now I know the Chinese market. I heard about millennial, travelers. I saw the great development of the visa, what has changed the Chinese market. And then after our second panel started, then all this inspiration probably put us into that way to think, what can I do further? What are the new things I still need to think about? So I would like to actually ask this question to Mr. Bonaparte, because just now I saw some of the Chinese colleagues there were putting notes down. This question probably is quite practical. I would like to ask you to explain to us, please, you mentioned about the few different sites, like Paris and also Berlin. Roughly how many days in a way for Chinese tourists visitors to take a look of these different places? Can they actually travel or cover all of these places just on one single trip?
Yes, certainly not. Because, these 5 places are 100 kilometers far away. And plus we add secondary products, which we propose to visit the main places, for instance, like Paris or Berlin, and other cities around. So we are talking to different segments of the market. I think that for a first travel, Chinese could visit, for instance, the most famous capitals like Berlin and Paris or Rome. But our approach is also, pending what was said before on the first panel, that the demand, the Chinese demand, is evaluating to a kind of, I would say, a Western market, Western way of making tourism. So we are opening our offer to more well-known products, so that these young people, maybe younger people, or more educated people might have interest to visit places who are not so famous, but they may have opportunity to discover very interesting things from Europe. And it's also in relation with the fact that some of these well-known places are, I would say, overcrowded. There's a problem of management of the tourists in Paris and in some other places. So we have to widespread the touristic demand out of the main places. And therefore, we try to diversify our propositions. So maybe for a first travel, 2 places, and for a second travel, they may visit other places, secondary places. Very interesting, because they will be aware of what they can see there. They can be aware of what kind of emotion they can get there, and to have the freedom, to visit by themselves. It's like if they would discover something by themselves. So it's a kind of adventure, It's another kind of tourism we try to promote. And pending what was said on the first panel, it seems to be very update to that.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. If we continue to if we continue this conversation with Mr. Dodd, so there will be lots of happenings in next year for the 2018 EU-China tourism year. So, would you like actually to share with us what will be the events that your business, your company will be participating in?
The most obvious one is Palermo. Palermo is the European city of culture. There are no direct flights between Palermo and China. Palermo is not on the Chinese cultural map. And we've been approached by Palermo to help them think, since it's the European city of culture, how to attract Chinese visitors. There are major palazzos opening up to show contemporary culture. And my view is that for European cities that are not London, are not Paris, are not Berlin, there needs to be an offer that mixes heritage and contemporary, that brings Chinese content into these cities, and that also thinks, as I said in my talk, that there are very large numbers of Chinese, not only students, but Chinese professionals. So a very important Chinese company called Wanda is based in London. In Milano, Huawei is based. So there are very large numbers of Chinese people here, or Chinese nationals, who, as it were, can be attracted to move to Palermo rather than trying to persuade somebody from Chengdu to go to Palermo. So I think what needs to be done, and I'm just giving you Palermo as an example, is to think strategically, but always to think past and present, China and the place, and to think and never forget the Chinese who live here in Europe amongst us. They're a very, very important group. And to be frank, I don't think any of us is thinking enough about them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dott. We still, at this moment, actually still have this with sightseeing, I mean, for Chinese travelers. I think all the Chinese colleagues here would agree with me. Actually, the major activities happen in Europe when they come to visit Europe is still, let's say, shopping, sightseeing. These are the two top things. So then, probably this question I would like to ask Mr. Warden. This is a bit slightly different from the topic you presented, but as an entrepreneur, European entrepreneur based in China, I believe their audience probably also thinking about venture further into the Chinese market. What's your advice of having an office in China? Some were asking, should we have a Chinese office in China? This is probably you would like to give a little bit of advice.
Yes, we are based partly in China and partly in Brussels. And of course, because one of our main target is the Chinese traveler. And to be honest, we launched our application just before the summer, and doing business with Chinese is not easy. What do I mean by that? Is that I see a clear difference when I pitch the project to Westerners or to Chinese. It requires a much higher level of trust before you can convince a Chinese consumer to use your app to get a tax refund. And so, I mean, if I have one advice to give, is that you should not, if you work with Chinese consumers, you should not underestimate that difficulty, especially when you are launching something new. Once you are established, once the ball is rolling, it becomes much easier because word of mouth is very effective in China. But boy, when you start, it's really an uphill battle.
Thank you very much for that. And I think I would then actually leave some time for our audience to submit their questions to our panelists. So Professor Out, you are invited onto the stage again. Please to share with us of some. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you also from my side for the panelists. And so you have been busy asking more questions. And so let's finish by looking at the last three most voted for questions, if we can see them on the screen. Here they are. And you see they're very much business-like. So number one, as a tour operator, my experience is that Chinese tourists are looking for a 5-star experience for 3-star prices. who isn't. What's the general opinion on this? So, question to the panel. First, what 4 things, this is China, not 4, 3 or 5, must a visitor attraction deliver in order to meet, exceed the expectations of Chinese visitor? And the third one, how will B2C demand grow versus B2B? How is tourism intermediation evolving? Wow, big question. So these are the 3 questions which got 39. The first one got 39 likes, so that's obviously the most obvious question. How can we earn money from our business? Now it's 41, and 24 and 16, so these are the top 3 questions. So, Minion, please see
Luis,
what we can get out of the panelists to answer these questions.
Would you like to actually to answer the first question, because you work quite a lot with Chinese tour operators. Do you have any answer or any suggestion for that?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, I think it's a very tough question. Yeah. But I guess it's a human, a normal, a logical. I mean, everyone wants to have a good service with a lower price. I mean, well, the question is, when we try to sell our service, we have to consider what they want, right? So when they are looking for a 5-star experience for a 3-star price, well, actually we try to convince them the price should be equal to the quality of the service. Yeah. And I guess this is a common problem or a common question for the traditional tour operator. Yeah. And in this way, I guess some add value can be added. For example, our application. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to pay 3-star price, well, we try to convince them you should pay the price, well, at least for 4 stars, and plus some extra service. For example, our application. Really, it's an audio guide for free, yeah, or with a lower price, and plus another kind of special service. Well, that depends on different operator, because now, especially in China, the competition is very intensive, especially for the tourism. It's a very traditional industry. I mean, the products are quite similar. Actually, it's traditional, not with a higher barrier or technology, obviously. So you have to think hard to get the client, to attract more clients. And I guess some of the operators have this thinking, and they move faster. We talk with a lot of travel agency or traditional travel operator. Some of them refuse us very directly. Well, we will take the job of the guide. Well, it's reasonable, but some of them just take us with a very solid and deep collaboration, because the revolution or the way to improve the service cannot be stopped. Cannot be stopped. And I found the different reaction in this year much better than the last year, because more and more traditional travel agency, they realize they should have new things to attract more clients, to solve some problem like this, looking for 5-star service but paying 3-star price. That's my opinion.
Well, I mean, I have something to say about this. My understanding is more that the question is not framed correctly, because I think it's true that operators, they are looking for a 3-star price, but I'm not sure they are looking for a 5-star experience. It's marketing. You do not forget that, of course, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but on average, the level of expectations of Chinese travelers is not anywhere close to the level of expectations of Western travelers. I don't want to, of course, I mean, you have exceptions, you have, the market is maturing very quickly and you have different segments, but on average, the expectations are not the same. So,
Well, I can just add one thing. I live in Berlin, so in Germany. The customer service there, they call customer service. I don't find it's called a customer service. I have to be honest. So I think it's also a way, probably, how you define this 5-star experience here among the industry experience here to what Chinese customers, they also experience all over the world. Particularly 70% of the Chinese outbound travelers travel out of China in the Asia destination, where customer service actually, to be honest, in very high standard as well. So, but we leave this question here because I think everyone has lots of different ideas and also opinions. Thank you very much for that. For our second question, what 3 things must a visitor attraction deliver in order to meet or exceed the expectations of the Chinese visitor? And again, another question about meeting the expectation or the satisfaction about the Chinese visitors. Does anyone from our?
I think one of the most important things is welcome and hospitality. To go back to the first question, staying in hotels in China has ruined my pleasure in staying in hotels in Europe. Because the truth is the hospitality and the welcome and the service in Chinese hotels largely is so much better than Europeans. In fact, a Chinese friend of mine went for a job and she said, what will people ask me? And I said, they may ask you what you think of British people. And my heart sank. And she said, can I tell them the truth? And I said, what is the truth? And she said, British people are cold fish. Now, this may or may not be fair to each and all of us, but hospitality and welcome, I think, is extraordinarily important. The second, I don't think it's a thing, and I understand this as a text, it's an experience. Let me give you an example. A Japanese company has just done an exhibition in Beijing. It's an immersive exhibition. It's had 250,000 visitors in 1 month, paying 300 RMB, which is around £30 each. It's moved to Shenzhen. It's bettered even that. An experience rather than a thing. An experience rather than object. If you go into good Chinese museums, you can scan what are called QR codes. QR codes are kind of machine-readable optical information, and the artist will pop up and will talk to you about a given individual work. So you need to be at the very cutting edge of technology, because China is way ahead of Europe in terms of technology. So those are 3 things that I would suggest are absolutely critical. Experience, welcome, and technology.
Thank you, Mr. Dodd. I know we still actually have 2 questions there, but time-wise, we would like to actually to finish this conference on time. I would like to ask every one of you to give another great applause to our second panel, of our panelists, and thank you very much.